Thank you, Mr. President and Mr. Prime Minister. Mr. President, I wanted to ask you about the situations in both Yemen and in Ukraine. On Yemen, you've held up the U.S. counterterrorism campaign there as a model for what you're hoping to achieve in your mission against the Islamic State group. How does the political upheaval in Yemen affect U.S. efforts there? And will it cause you in any way to retool aspects of your broader counterterrorism strategy? And on Ukraine, pro-Russian rebels are again launching new offenses. How at this point can you justify not taking a different approach given that the Minsk agreement has all but failed and sanctions may have had an impact on the Russian economy, but they don't appear to be changing Russia's calculus when it comes to Ukraine? And Mr. Prime Minister, I wanted to go back to climate change. White House officials have said that they hope that the recent U.S.-China agreement can spur countries like India to make similar commitments to cut emissions. I'm wondering if you feel any pressure to take that kind of action because of the China agreement. And can a Paris climate summit produce a substantial result without that type of commitment from India? Thank you.
Good. Well, first of all, with respect to Ukraine, what I've said consistently is that we have no interest in seeing Russia weakened or its economy in shambles. We have a profound interest, as I believe every country does, in promoting a core principle, which is large countries don't bully smaller countries. They don't encroach on their territorial integrity. They don't encroach on their sovereignty, and that's what's at stake in Ukraine. And what we have done is to consistently isolate Russia on this issue and to raise the costs that Russia confronts. Now, when you say that we should take a different approach, Julie, I don't know exactly what you're referring to. I've been very clear that it would not be effective for us to engage in a military conflict with Russia on this issue. But what we can do is to continue to support Ukraine's ability to control its own territory. And that involves a combination of the economic pressure that's been brought to bear in sanctions, the diplomatic isolation that has been brought to bear against Russia, and as important as anything, making sure that we're continuing to provide the support that Ukraine needs to sustain its economy during this transition period and to help its military with basic supplies and equipment, as well as the continuing training and exercises that have been taking place between NATO and Ukraine for quite some time. We are deeply concerned about the latest break in the ceasefire and the aggression that these separatists, with Russian backing, Russian equipment, Russian financing, Russian training, and Russian troops, are conducting. And we will continue to take the approach that we've taken in the past, which is to ratchet up the pressure on Russia. And I will look at all additional options that are available to us short of military confrontation and try to address this issue. And we'll be in close consultation with our international partners, and particularly European partners, to assure that they stay in lockstep with us on this issue. What we've been very successful at is maintaining unity across the Atlantic on this issue, and that's going to be a continuing priority of mine. But ultimately, what I've said before remains true. If Mr. Putin and if Russia are hell-bent on engaging in military conflicts, their military is more powerful than Ukraine's. And the question is going to be whether they continue to pursue a path that not only is bad for the people of Ukraine, but is bad for the people of Russia. And are we able to continue to raise the costs even as we're creating an off-ramp diplomatically that eventually the Kremlin starts pursuing a more sensible policy and resolving this issue. With regard to Yemen, my top priority has and always will be to make sure that our people on the ground in Yemen are safe. That's something that we have been emphasizing for the last several months and builds on the work that we've been doing over the last several years. It is a dangerous country in a dangerous part of the world. A second priority is to maintain our counterterrorism pressure on al-Qaeda in Yemen. And we have been doing that. And I saw some news reports that suggested somehow that that counterterrorism activity had been suspended. That is not accurate. We continue to go after high-value targets inside of Yemen, and we will continue to maintain the pressure that's required to keep the American people safe. We are concerned about what has always been a fragile central government and the forces inside of Yemen that are constantly threatening to break apart between north-south, between Houthi and Sunni inside of Yemen, and this is one more sequence in what has been an ongoing turbulent process inside of Yemen. And what we are advising, not just the various factions inside of Yemen, but also working with our partners like the Gulf countries who have impact and influence inside of Yemen, is that at this point what's needed is to respect a constitutional process that can resolve some of these differences peacefully and assure that all the groups inside of Yemen are resorting to political rather than military means to resolve these differences. But I guess the point, Julie, is Yemen has never been a perfect democracy or an island of stability. What I've said is that our efforts to go after terrorist networks inside of Yemen without an occupying U.S. Army, but rather by partnering and intelligence sharing with that local government, is the approach that we're going to need to take. And that continues to be the case. The alternative would be for us to play whack-a-mole every time there is a terrorist actor inside of any given country to deploy U.S. troops. And that's not a sustainable strategy. So we'll continue to try to refine and fine-tune this model, but it is the model that we're going to have to work with because the alternative would be massive U.S. deployments in perpetuity, which would create its own blowback and cause probably more problems than it would potentially solve. And we're going to have to recognize that there are going to be a number of the countries where terrorists have located that are not strong countries. That's the nature of the problem that we confront. Terrorists typically are not going to be locating and maintaining bases and having broad networks inside of countries that have strong central governments, strong militaries, and strong law enforcement. By definition, we're going to be operating in places where oftentimes there's a vacuum or capabilities are somewhat low. And we've got to just continually apply patience, training, resources, and we then have to help, in some cases, broker political agreements as well. So it is a long, arduous process. It is not neat and it is not simple. But it is the best option that we have. And what we have shown is that we can maintain the kind of pressure on these terrorist networks even in these kinds of difficult to operate environments.
मैं समझता हूं कि चीन और अमेरिका का जो जलवायु परिवर्तन के संबंध में समझौता हुआ है उसका भारत पर कोई प्रेशर है क्या? भारत एक स्वतंत्र देश है, उस पर न किसी देश का न किसी व्यक्ति का प्रेशर काम आता है। लेकिन प्रेशर है। प्रेशर इस बात का है कि हम भावी पीढ़ी को कैसी पृथ्वी देना चाहते हैं। क्लाइमेट चेंज इटसेल्फ एक बहुत बड़ा प्रेशर है। ग्लोबल वार्मिंग इटसेल्फ एक बहुत बड़ा प्रेशर है। और जिसके भी दिल में भावी पीढ़ी के लिए चिंता है, आने वाली पीढ़ियों के लिए चिंता है, उनका ये दायित्व बनता है कि वे आज इस क्लाइमेट के संबंध में कॉन्शियस बने, उन रीति नीतियों को अपनाएं ताकि हम भावी पीढ़ी को एक अच्छी जिंदगी दे सके, अच्छा एनवायरनमेंट दे सके। और मैं मानता हूं ये प्रेशर हर देश पे होना चाहिए, हर सरकार पर होना चाहिए, हर व्यक्ति पर होना चाहिए। और उसी प्रेशर को हम समझ पाते हैं और उसी को हम रिस्पॉन्ड कर रहे हैं।
It's my feeling that the agreement that has been concluded between the United States and China does not impose any pressure on us. India is an independent country, and there is no pressure on us from any country or any person. But there is pressure. When we think about the future generations and what kind of a world we are going to give them, then there is pressure. Climate change itself is a huge pressure. Global warming is a huge pressure. And all those who think about a better life and a better world for the future generations, those who are concerned about this, then it is their duty and their conscience. They would want to give a better lifestyle to the future generations, a good life and a good environment. There is pressure for all those people. There is pressure on all countries, on all governments, and on all peoples. Thank you.
Last question, Ashish Singh, ABP News.
Thank you, Akbar sir. Good evening to both Honorable Prime Minister and President Barack Obama. My question is for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, but let me first congratulate both of you for taking the relationship forward, more specifically on nuclear deal issue, जैसा प्रधानमंत्री जी आपने बताया. प्रधानमंत्री जी, आज हमने दिलचस्प तस्वीरें देखी आपकी प्रेसिडेंट ओबामा के साथ, अलग से ठीक उस तरह जिस तरह से वॉशिंगटन में हमने देखा था. मैं उस यात्रा के दौरान आपके वहां पर था. प्रेसिडेंट ओबामा आपके साथ आए थे, आप कुछ देर टहले, एक दूसरे के साथ बातचीत की, बेहतर तरीके से समझा. आज फिर हमने वो तस्वीरें देखी. इससे पहले सुबह आपने राष्ट्रपति को रिसीव किया एयरपोर्ट पर. ये खास मित्रता क्या है आप दोनों की? और आज जब आप दोनों मिले प्रधानमंत्री जी, तो किन बिंदुओं पर बात हुई, कौन सी बातें आप हमारे साथ शेयर कर सकते हैं? थैंक यू.
जहां तक बातों का सवाल है, पर्दे में रहने दें. और हम बार बार इस प्रकार से क्यों मिलते हैं, ये सवाल बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण है. मैं इस क्षेत्र में नया हूं, लेकिन भी इस अल्प समय के अनुभव से मैं कह सकता हूं कि दो देशों के साथ रिश्ते कागज पर कहां फुल स्टॉप है, कहां कॉमा है, उसके आधार पर निर्धारित कम होते हैं. लीडरों के बीच खुलापन कितना है, एक दूसरे को जानने के अवसर कितने हैं, केमिस्ट्री कैसे मैच करती है, वो बहुत ज्यादा निर्भर करता है. और जब कैमरे से दूर अकेले में गप मारते हैं तो हम एक दूसरे को बड़ी निकटता से जान सकते हैं. मेरी और बराक के बीच में वो दोस्ती बन गई है. उस खुलेपन के कारण हम आराम से फोन पे बात कर लेते हैं, हम आराम से गप मार लेते हैं, हंसी मजाक कर लेते हैं. इस केमिस्ट्री ने मुझको और बराक को तो निकट लाया ही है, वॉशिंगटन और दिल्ली को भी निकट लाया है, लेकिन अमेरिका की जनता और हिंदुस्तान की जनता को भी निकट लाया है. और ये पर्सनल केमिस्ट्री है. मैं समझता हूं ये बहुत मैटर करती है और ये पनपनी चाहिए. ऐसे ही अवसर पर पनपती है.
Yes, we had talks, and
Question.
the question, okay. Excellencies, both of you held talks, and my question is to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. You've held delegation-level talks, but we often see, as you did in the US, both you excellencies, beyond the delegation-level talks, go into a huddle and hold talks tete-a-tete. And what exactly do you talk about, and what is this friendship, and which are the issues that you discussed, and which are the issues that you can share with us? Yes, we held very detailed talks, and some of these, the results and the issues that were discussed, let's keep them behind curtains. Why do we keep going into huddle and hold talks tete-a-tete? Well, I'd just like to say that I'm fairly new in this area. But with this little experience that I have gained over this short period of time, I can say that relations between countries depends less on full stops and commas and more between the relationship between leaders, the openness, how much they know each other, and the chemistry between them. This matters more and is very important. In fact, far from the camera, when we speak, then we become closer to each other. Barak and I have forged a friendship. There is openness when we talk, and we even joke and share a lot together. I think this is the chemistry which has not only brought Washington and Delhi, Barak and I closer, but also the two peoples of the two countries closer. Personal chemistry between leaders is very important, and this can only grow. Thank you.
I would just add, the Prime Minister, as I said, caused great excitement in the United States when he visited. And I do think that in addition to a personal friendship that we've been able to build in a fairly brief amount of time, we're also reflecting the warmth and affection between the Indian people and the American people. Part of the reason we're such natural partners is because we share values as former colonies, as the two largest democracies in the world, as entrepreneurial nations, as people who believe in the freedom and dignity and worth of all individuals. And so it's not surprising then that we have a friendship, because hopefully we're reflecting the values of our peoples. And what I'm very excited about is given the Prime Minister's energy and ambition for his country and lifting people out of poverty and moving forward and on the reform agenda that he's put forward, that affection can then be translated into very specific actions, and we're seeing that reflected here today. He's right, though, we can't tell you everything that we talked about. Although I will share one thing, and that is we compared how much sleep each of us is getting. And it turns out that Modi is getting even less sleep than me. But, of course, that's because he's still new. After you've been doing this for about 6 years, maybe he'll be able to get an extra hour. All right? Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We come to the end of this event.
మోదీ ఒబామా సంయుక్త మీడియా సమావేశం ముగిసింది. అమెరికా అధ్యక్షుడు 2 సార్లు భారత్ రావడం అంటే ఇరు దేశాల మధ్య సంబంధాలను పునర్నిర్వచించడమేనని ప్రధాని నరేంద్ర మోదీ అభిప్రాయపడ్డారు. భారత్ అమెరికా రక్షణ ఒప్పందాలు దేశీయంగా రక్షణ ఉత్పత్తుల పరిశ్రమకు ఊతమిస్తాయన్నారు. ఇదే సమయంలో అమెరికా అధ్యక్షుడు ఒబామా కూడా భారత్తో సంబంధాలు తమ ప్రథమ ప్రాధాన్యమని స్పష్టం చేశారు. ఐరాస భద్రతా మండలిలో భారత్కు శాశ్వత సభ్యత్వానికి పూర్తి మద్దతు తెలిపారు. పౌర అణు ఒప్పందం అనేది భారత్ అమెరికా మధ్య మారిన సంబంధాలకు నిదర్శనమని ఇరువురు అగ్రనేతలు అభిప్రాయపడ్డారు.